Okay, Miss Kathy. So I'm going to begin right now. I'm going to begin with an introduction and then I'll pass it down to you and start asking some questions, okay? And if you
Okay,
have any questions in between, feel free to ask me anything. All
okay,
right, so I'll begin. So today is March 2nd, 2022. My name's Adolfo Romero, and I'm here today with Miss Kathy Long. Sorry,
yes,
yes. And we are
yes.
here on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and we're here conducting oral histories with the Hammocks community, which is nearby UF, and there is a lot of collaboration on that end. So today I would like to learn a little bit about. Let's begin with a little bit about yourself, Kathy. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you end up in the Gainesville community?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and then left for college and then graduate school. And event and at the end of my graduate school experience, I was in Baltimore. I finished my PhD with the School of Public Health there. And then I was recruited to Montana State University, place I never thought I would go, but that I absolutely loved. And I was there for about a little under 15 years. And I served as dean in the last 5 of those years. And then I was actually invited to apply at the University of Florida. And I was very happy in Montana, but I thought it would be a wonderful experience to be in a big health science center in a very different environment than Montana State University. So I applied and I was a finalist and finally chosen to be the Dean of the College of Nursing. So it was in that capacity that I was recruited to serve on the initial board of directors at Hammock, which was when it was simply a dream in the, I guess, a glint in the eye of John Lombardi, who was president at that point, and several other people who were enthusiastic about it, but he certainly was. And there were donors who thought it would be a marvelous opportunity, and alums who felt the same way. So at that point, I didn't know much about continuous care retirement communities, but I did learn a great deal because it was everything from securing the property to, beginning to dig a hole. And I learned a lot about construction. Fortunately, there were people on the board of directors with me who focused heavily on the financial aspects and also understood the contractual and construction aspects. And so what I believe I brought as a contribution repeatedly was a focus on how this community would serve people and also an awareness of the need to be sure that that promise of forever healthcare would be not only met, but it would be met very successfully. So I guess if you asked other board members what I brought up, often it was, yes, but what will this mean to the residents? Yes, but if we construct it that way, will that be helpful for people in the latter years of their lives? So that was my focus. And interestingly, I was reappointed and then reappointed. So I ended up on the board of directors for, don't remember exactly, but it was in the neighborhood of 11 years. And Bernie Matchin was the last president who reappointed me. And it was a great learning experience for me. I also chaired the board for 2 years, and that was an interesting experience. It was at a time when many healthcare facilities were struggling with HIPAA and privacy issues. And that was, believe it or not, kind of new. And it was something that I was acutely aware of, but I candidly think that many others, particularly in the early management phase of OCAMIC, may not have been so aware of. So that was an interesting set of issues to deal with successfully. And I was very excited about OCAMIC. I was excited to see it evolve and open, and I have always been proud of my affiliation with it. And then I got a terrific and unexpected reward, and my husband and I decided that he has a serious illness, and we decided that we needed to move earlier rather than later to a CCRC. And OCAMIC was on our short list for sure. We've ended up at Fleet Landing in Atlantic Beach, primarily because we have grandsons that live in Jacksonville, and they're only 40 minutes away as opposed to about 2.5 hours away. So but when we came to interview at Fleet Landing, the salesperson said to me, "You're asking the most interesting questions. How is it that you know so much about CCRCs?" And I said, because I was a part and had the opportunity to be a part of sort of bringing one out of the ground and seeing it open. So I enjoyed those years of service. They were at times very intensive in relation to the time they had to be invested. I kidded President Manchin that I was doing basically 2 jobs, but I hadn't seen the second salary. But I was not the only one in that situation. People from the university were heavily invested in making this successful. And I'm really very honored and pleased to have been a part of it.
Thank you for sharing that. I definitely, I'm very interested the way that your trajectory ended from like Dean College of Nursing and then working with the community. What years were you part of the Dean of College of Nursing? Do you know what time that was? Like around what period of time?
That I was the Dean of the College of Nursing?
Yeah.
Yes, I started in 1995 and I was there for 18 years.
Wow, that's incredible. But I think that in this case, you're sort of like a centerpiece for the community because you have this background on top of like what PEEP residents need. So I feel like on that point, you were able to like vocalize with the community, with the residents, kind of connect the residents, but also with the board members working on this project and the needs, look out for the needs of the community and residents that we're part of. What were some of the challenges that you would face in the beginning? I'm sure it was not an easy thing, just coming in and figuring out where do we go from here. What were some of those initial challenges that you had?
Well, I think a unique challenge was that we wanted to have this CCRC closely connected to the University of Florida, and in many ways building a collaboration that would be very beneficial on both sides for the OCAMIC community and for the university. But we also had to bear in mind that the university could not be financially or in any other way responsible for OCAMIC. So there were some very significant legal challenges that needed to be sorted out. And I don't know if Leslie Bram is on your list of people to speak with, but if not, she should be, because she's an attorney and she was on the board for quite a long time. And she was really a key player in helping us employ other attorneys and deal with the knotty questions of financing and maintaining a closeness while also maintaining a necessary distance. So in the early days, I think that might have been our biggest challenge. The second challenge was that when you start a project like this, everyone has their own vision of what it's going to be and what it can do. And we had to take some very interesting perspectives and try to move them forward into a vision that could be shared by those in the university and those that were going to be providing leadership in OCAMIC, and most particularly the alumni who saw themselves living in this community sometime in the future, and very good friends of the university, people who had made substantial contributions to the university, also had a lot of interest in this as a place that would become their future home.
All right, thank you. My next question would be, why is OCAMIC unique from other senior living communities? How is it different, would you say?
Well, probably in two ways. One, it's one of the best. And there are some CCRCs in Florida and in the nation that are not particularly, what shall I say, either not financially successful or not successful in really meeting the needs of the communities they're serving. So OCAMIC, I think, has done a very good job. Now, understand, for the last 10 years or more, I've been watching it from afar, although I do have good friends who live there. And I think its other uniqueness is certainly its geographic and other ties to the University of Florida, being so close to UF and being so tied to UF, so that everything that UF can offer, from veterinary services to symphonic music presentations, are available to the residents at OCAMIC, and oftentimes available to them in very special and unique ways. As I understood it, the standing joke was, after OCAMIC opened, that almost everything at UF was available to OCAMIC residents except football tickets and premier parking. Given what our poor team has been through recently, maybe they can now have football tickets, but I can guarantee you there's a lot of loyal Gators. And it's been nice to see the community evolve in a way which is very inclusive of people who are not from UF, who didn't come because they were affiliated with UF, but who came to OCAMIC because it was OCAMIC. And, they maybe became adopted Gators or not, but they still fit in well at OCAMIC.
Okay, no, yeah, then that makes quite sense. You kind of beat me to my question. I was trying to get to what was the initial selling point to attract the residents? But I'm thinking here with the university at home, maybe that was one of those perks. Are there other things that you might think that were initial selling points?
Well, Gainesville's a great place to live, whether you're affiliated with the university or not. It's one of those absolutely ideal university towns that has enough to offer that almost anything you want to be a part of is there, but it also is and still has some of its small town feel. I'm always amazed when I go back to see how much it's grown. But it's a small town, certainly compared to, for example, Jacksonville or Orlando or other spots that generally have great weather. And then the other, I would be amiss if I didn't mention, is the extraordinary healthcare and the range and the quality of healthcare available through the University Health Science Center.
Okay. And just going back a little bit, I guess before the community was built, where did the idea stem from? Who's the one that originated, decided hey, we need to do this and it has to be now or never type of thing? So how did that begin?
Well, I may not know all of the inside of that, but from my perspective, John Lombardi, then president, really was excited about this potential. And Margot Powers, and her family, and Margot was a dear friend of the college and one of the first individuals to live at OCAMIC, and others can probably fill in the space, but I think part of what initiated OCAMIC was a gift from the Powers family of some of the land that was available. And again, I don't know all the intricacies of that, but I would say she and her family were very instrumental in moving the project, and it really ignited John Lombardi.
Okay. As a board member, what were some of the issues that you would discuss within those board meetings, or what were other decisions that you would have to face and make during the time that you work as a board member?
Well, it was very different early on. Early on, we were talking about construction timetables and construction costs, and most particularly financing. This is a huge undertaking. The scope of the financial issues and the borrowed funds that are necessary to bring a CCRC to real life were kind of astounding to me. Fortunately, again, there were people that served on the board who were really financially very savvy and really took the lead on helping with those kinds of issues. And another name I mentioned, have you talked to Robert Frank?
Robert Frank, actually, let me check. I think so. I think we already had him. I did not do that interview, but I believe we have. Let me check. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about Mr. Frank?
Oh, can I tell him about?
No,
he was the former dean of what is now the College of Public Health and Health Professions. He's out in New Mexico, lives in New Mexico now. He's a past president at the University of New Mexico.
You said, is it Frank Robert or?
It's Robert first name.
Okay.
Last name Frank.
Oh yeah, we've talked to him.
Okay.
We have him here.
Okay.
Okay.
He's a good friend. Tell him if you talk to him later, I said, don't believe anything he says.
Will do.
No, he really had a very good knowledge of the regulatory process related to having a skilled nursing facility and assisted living facility, memory care unit, all of those kinds of things. And he also really had a very good working knowledge of some of the financial aspects. And there were others, but he really contributed a great deal in that regard.
All right.
So we dealt with those issues early on. And once the community opened, we dealt with some of the issues of management, finding the right people to lead overall and to lead various aspects of the facility. So that presented some challenges for a while. I think it takes a very unique person to be the CEO of CCRC. They have to have, or at least in my view, should have some sort of assisted living and healthcare background, but they also need extraordinary human resources and management skills. So we worked at that. And I think at the time that I left OHOP, which really was at the time I retired from UF, it was moving along well, but those were some of the challenges we faced and some of the issues we had to discuss, sometimes difficult issues about what residents wanted and what management could deliver and what were reasonable requests from residents. And in some ways, how you deal with requests that may seem valid to the individual person, but are impossible to provide.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit more or expand a little bit about like types of resources like that residents might ask? And yeah, because I mean, you're right. I think you're completely right. You know, at times residents might want something, it's almost impossible to get it. But when do you say no to them? You know, when do you realize, hey, we can't have everything, but we could have a lot of things, but not everything. But what were some of those things that you would say that residents
what I'll never forget is pets. How many?
How many?
we all agreed you needed pets, but of what size and how many? And, you know, I think particularly for older people, I guess I'm in that category now, pets become increasingly an important part of their lives. And so a lot of the regulations about, I don't know what they finally settled on, but we had people who wanted to bring 6 cats, and so we said, or 3 large dogs or whatever. And so we went back and forth and I think made reasonable settlements. I think what we came down to is 2 pets per household. And I don't think we put a limit on size, but we put a limit on pet behavior. But it sounds like a silly thing, but it was a difficult thing to address, and it was hard for residents. Some were fine with it, but some, it was very difficult for them to ponder what they were going to do with their extra cat or whatever. What else? Well, dining is always an issue, and I'm finding that at the CCRC where I live now, that is almost impossible to address in a way that is fiscally responsible and meets every single individual's needs. But I think OHOP did a pretty good job. And one of the things they did that just about everyone liked and enjoyed was the bar. They had a very nice bar area, and I guess they still do. And I find it funny because here at OHOP, they have 2 bars. It's OHOP, not OHOP, I'm saying OHOP, I'm not Fleet Landing. But here at Fleet Landing, there are 2 bars, and Fleet Landing is a larger number of residents than they have at OHOP. And the bars are exceedingly popular.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. Like, what is the culture inside OHOP? It seems like, based on what we're mentioning, the bar's the scene, people want to go out, just, partake, communicate with everyone. Can you tell me a little bit about the culture?
Well, my knowledge of the culture at OHOP is dated for sure. But I think when I was a part of OHOP, the goal was really to knit together a community that cared about each other, and that everyone didn't have to participate in everything. There were some people who were much more introverted and much more private, and others that were very group oriented. But offering activities that gave people a variety of things to do and helping people, especially new people when they arrived, become a part of the community, trying to have events where residents could meet people who were new and were arriving and helping them integrate. And I think it was particularly true when people came from what then was called, they came from far away, meaning that they didn't come from the UF community. Maybe they only came from South Florida, but it was a different sense. And I think there was a lot of focus on helping those people integrate, and they could still cheer, for the Georgia dogs, maybe quietly, but integrating people who were not initially out of the Gator community was a challenge. I think if a CCRC is succeeding, then people really do feel like they're part of a community. And I can now reflect on how important that is to me, living in a different CCRC. And I think OHOP has done it well. And it's also respect to those people who are not particularly oriented to community. They want to live there, but they are much more private. So that's a challenge, but I think OHOP has met it well.
Okay. Can you maybe explain to me a little bit about things that have changed, maybe from the beginning, how things were being run versus like towards the end of your time at OHOP and helping out? How did things develop over time? Maybe, at one point you didn't have all the resources available, like right now at this point. I just want to understand a little bit more, like where you guys began, how it started, and then how do we end up where we're at today? Yeah.
I know that several members of the board visited other CCRCs to see what they were like. And we collected information from CCRCs in different parts of the country, as well as in different parts of Florida. I think at the time that we began, I don't recall that we knew of any CCRCs that were as closely affiliated with a university partner as what we hoped to do. So that was a unique piece for the University of Florida. And I don't know that there was any magic in how we got from then to now. And again, I'm 10 years gone from where they are. But as I say, I have friends. In fact, I'll be a week from now, I'll be out visiting some people who are living at Hammock. And so I get to hear their perspective, which is generally quite positive. But I think we looked a lot at what other CCRCs had done, and we didn't adopt any particular existing model, but we learned from what was out there. And we also learned from some CCRCs that had failed, particularly failed financially, which was a big concern for us. The last thing we wanted was to start something of this nature affiliated with UF and have it not be successful financially. So we were very careful with that and made, I think, generally good decisions about what we could afford to do and what would make this an attractive community for people, not just people who were quite wealthy, but for people who would be, for example, faculty retirees living on a more limited or modest income. We wanted the place to have diversity of income and interests and people's backgrounds. And so when the physical facility was designed, it was designed to accommodate people who wanted their own freestanding home, which would be fairly large, and people who wanted a smaller apartment, and that fit their particular financial situation. That was especially true, I think, of individuals who wanted to live in apartments as well, because they would be closer to their neighbors and be more a part of the community. So.
Okay. I'm thinking right now, like when you first joined in the UF board, they asked you to be part of the UF board members and collaborating with the OHOP community. What were your initial thoughts? Did you feel prepared? I mean, this is totally something new grounds, moving from college of dean, from nursing, and then jumping in over here. How was that experience on your end? How did you reconcile those positions?
Well, it was a steep learning curve in several aspects. But I will say I was very excited to be a member of the board, because I felt it would be so important to focus on healthcare, and that even if the meals were terrific and all of the activities were splendid, if the community didn't do a good job of taking care of people when they were most vulnerable, then in my view, it would have failed. And so I became kind of a broken record in that regard. I think I had an effect and made that a piece of everyone's awareness. And I think there was certainly agreement. It's just that sometimes that gets lost in some other aspects that are also important. So I was mostly excited, and I kind of learned as I went. I certainly was not an expert when I began. I felt like by the time I stepped away, I was an expert on what should happen in CCRCs and what shouldn't and how you can get there. And for an interesting aside, the Fleet Landing CCRC in Atlantic Beach has 2 full voting members who are residents who serve on the board in a full capacity. And I was encouraged to apply for one of those vacancies. And I now just completed my first year on the board of directors at Fleet Landing. So
Congratulations on that. You're still going. I would think I thought it was retirement time, but you keep going and going.
Well,
That's
you kind of want to retire without retiring from all of the things that you enjoy. And two of my former colleagues on the OHOP board, when I told them this, their comment was, "You're a glutton for punishment." And I said, I know we had ups and downs, and they just said, "Really, you're going to do that?" But it's interesting work, and probably particularly interesting because no matter what you do, you realize and have to realize that not everyone will be happy. You just need to make the majority of people very happy, and then work with the people who are disgruntled or just not satisfied, and try to make some adjustments for those folks.
All right. Where do you see yourself in the next coming years? Planning keep on working, or what do you see yourself doing?
Well, I have fully retired from nursing, but I love nursing and I maintain my nursing license. And if things were different in my personal life, I might actually be more active in some more limited way in nursing. But now being on the board of directors here at Fleet Landing is a very exciting challenge. And in addition, I volunteer for an adult literacy program. And I enjoy that very much because in addition to nursing, I spent a lot of my career teaching, and I enjoy teaching. I never had really taught adult literacy, so that's a fascinating new challenge.
No, and this is really interesting. Like when I saw your name first and then I saw it said nursing right there, I was like, my wife, she's a nurse as well for Chance right now, CCRN and all that good stuff. With ICU, she works in there. And I'm like, I want to understand this perspective. How do you go from one role to the next? Like it's a little bit different when you're taking care of the patients, doing all this work, working in that field on that end, and then like transitioning to becoming a board member, but still helping out the community and understanding those needs. So I don't know, like, as a nurse, you know how difficult, how strenuous it can be and can get. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, for my wife, like, you could always do something else too, but still be like in the helping out people in a different capacity. So
she may want to become a faculty member.
Or that, right?
And I had a mentor who I asked her similar questions, because you're right. I think most of us go into nursing because of the desire to have to be a helper in people's lives, and often at their most difficult and vulnerable times. And that there's a great deal of satisfaction in that kind of interpersonal relationship. And when I went into teaching nursing students, I continued to practice a part of the time. But I realized too that there's great satisfaction in sharing that passion and knowledge with what will be the next generation of nurses. And when I went into administration, that was a hard step, but I realized this is fascinating, because I'm now, if I do it well, creating the environment in which the faculty can do the very best job of developing the very best new nurses. So there's a thread that continues. And when I moved to the OHOP board, as I mentioned to you, nobody forgot that I was a nurse, because I brought up those aspects of human caring repeatedly. But I'm grateful. I learned so much on that board, and there was such expertise in areas that I was not expert in. And I think that made everything come together.
How did you get involved with nursing? Like, where did it stem as a kid? Did you know you wanted to become sort of get into that field, or when did you decided like, no, this is the pathway, the career pathway I want to do?
It's interesting. My father was first generation in his family to go to college, and he was clear that he wanted all of his children to go to college. He was maybe interested in women's rights and long before anybody else thought about it, but he never thought that his daughters would do less in their lives or their careers than his son would. And my mother was a nurse, and people said to me, "Oh, you're going to be a nurse." And I repeatedly said, "No, I'm not going to be a nurse. I haven't decided what I'm going to be. No, I'm not going to be a nurse." And yet, when I was in my last year of high school, I began exploring careers, and I met someone who said, there's a new way to become a nurse. This is very old information, but you can go to college and get a bachelor's degree. And you don't have to go to a hospital program. You can get all the knowledge you would get in college and a college degree and become a nurse. And that really excited me. And my father took me to visit some colleges, and I ultimately selected Catholic University in Washington, which has a great nursing program. And from there, I went on to get a master's degree and then to get a PhD in pieces. I got the master's degree while I was practicing clinically. And then I had about a 10-year period where I practiced clinically and then decided a PhD would really open some new doors for me. And I became interested in some kinds of research as well. So I was fortunate to have those opportunities in my life.
What was your PhD on?
My PhD was in behavioral sciences, but from the School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins. So I had to have the basics of public health to get any degree, but I focused on behavioral sciences because my advanced preparation in nursing was in psychiatric nursing.
Wow, that's definitely, yeah, John Hopkins is quite the school to get those degrees from. So I think you planned that out pretty well, like the way that, going from your BA. And I think, at least I'm originally from Chicago, but the way that it works, like over there, you could do a program. Now they're getting a little bit more, you need the BA to do if you're going to be nursing. But back in the days, like just go through a 2-year program, you'll become a nurse, and that's it. But now they're making a lot of the nurses, that's one of the biggest issues. They're making them get the BAs, go through school back again. And a lot of them, that's what they have to do if they want to keep on working. But it goes back to what you're saying, the knowledge. You just want to prepare better nurses, better, as much as you can to provide better materials so they could treat people in a better way too. And at the same time, I think you were fortunate on that end that you were able to get that BA. You weren't just for the program, and that kind of propelled you go for a master's eventually later on, and then a PhD. And I can't believe you actually went through you were in clinicals, you were doing clinicals, and you were getting your MA at the same time.
Yeah, actually, BS is the usual degree, usually a Bachelor of Science, not always, and then a Master of Science in nursing. And yes, I practiced, I practiced part-time during my master's degree, and then I had 2 part-time positions. One was in teaching at the University of Maryland, and the other one was in private practice with a psychiatrist when I was getting my PhD. And I was really fortunate that at that time, NIH, I had a scholarship for my first year at Johns Hopkins. And it was a 1-year scholarship. They were very clear, no matter how well you did, you had to figure out how to pay the rest of it. So the National Institutes of Health was very interested in having more doctorally prepared nurses. So I received a fellowship that gave me a very small stipend to live on, but it paid my tuition at Hopkins, and I was eternally grateful for that. So I used to laugh about, 2 part-time jobs and working on a PhD, and, I'd be excited at the end of a month if I had $16 left or something. It was a tight budget, but I always felt so fortunate to have my family's support, not just had some help financially, but also just their support that higher education was worth pursuing. And my dad used to joke, he said, when I suggested to you that it would really be broadening if you went away to college, I didn't mean that you should never come home. But in fact, I never lived in Buffalo again, although I visited very often. I went to school in Detroit and then in back in Baltimore for Hopkins. And then I took my first teaching job in Montana. So it's been an interesting career. And when I talk to potential students, I tell them you really have to have a passion because it's not an easy career to pursue. But I think it's so rewarding to be able to look back and think about the lives you've touched.
Right. It definitely takes a specific type of person. I'll be honest with you. Like, even I see my wife and I'm like, man, you're so kind and nice. It's like, I don't know if I'm not trying to be like stereotype the profession at all, but I think those are the quality traits that you sort of need to navigate those waters and those professions. But yeah, no, this has been a great pleasure talking to you today. I wanted to see, like, where do you think Hammock community will be heading in the next 10, 15 years? Where do you see it down the road? Like, things that changes that they could potentially do in the upcoming 10, 15 years? Do you have any suggestions on that?
I think they have some adjacent undeveloped land. And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they're considering an expansion because of the demographics. There's going to be more and more demand for good living situations for older people. And I think Hammock is very well situated to be able to offer that. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we hear about, Hammock Phase 2 or something. And I think that would happen. Other than that, I think there are challenges related to healthcare within CCRCs. One in particular is dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And if you look at the statistics of what's going to be happening to our older population, that's a very unique kind of healthcare. And I think almost all CCRCs are facing that issue. How will they manage it well for the people with dementia and also well for their family members and caregivers?
I think you brought a good point right there. We should have talked a little bit about that. Let's talk maybe a little bit about healthcare. What are some of the, issues with it? Because, healthcare pays for some portion of it too, but not everything out there. So do you have any answers or not? I guess not answers, but things. What are some of the issues that are happening, such as the one that you just mentioned? Alzheimer's disease, dementia occurring too. How can we better prepare ourselves for those type of treatments? What can we do on our end?
Yes, well, we know people are living longer, and healthcare becomes more challenging for any person as they age, even people who are lucky enough to get into their 80s or even 90s without a major disease. The limitations on hearing and vision and mobility are all issues. And I was just recently at a board retreat for Fleet Landing, and they showed the demographics of the United States. And it's a straight line up in terms of age. It's just growing. So we're working to keep people alive. But I don't think we're thinking about, are we going to provide the quality of life those people need? And I think that's maybe where CCRCs have a very unique niche, because they say we will provide care for you for the rest of your life. And I think that's a very important promise, and it needs to be taken very seriously. And there needs to be planning, because there will be people who are living into their 90s. I know here at Fleet Landing, there are several people over 100 years old. And helping those people have, not just be alive, but have a meaningful life is a great challenge. So I think CCRCs will have to think about, and other healthcare facilities, but I think CCRCs, we may see more of them or more of models similar to them. And looking at the fact that a major focus of our healthcare going forward is going to be caring for people who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's just going to be true. And hospitals are not the place for those people at all. And so where will they be? And you're right, the funding, well, many people are predicting it will bankrupt Medicare. Mm-hmm. And we know right now that people who need to be in nursing homes will not really, unless they're Medicaid eligible and have given up all of their resources or don't have any, we don't know how we're going to pay for them, but we do know that that's coming. And I think it's a tremendous challenge. And I think one of the things we're looking at Fleet Landing are, alternate models for helping people that are very old and frail, having, some experiences that are helpful for them, and maintaining a community for those people so they're not excluded. In that regard, I think things like wellness programs that can adapt, they can do just as well for an active 68-year-old as they can for a 94-year-old person who's much less capable. And I've seen a lot of that in different parts of the country where there's a heavy focus on developing activities and wellness programs that fit the needs of people of different ages.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to the next question. When individuals or residents, incoming residents, when they join the community, what are some of the things that they look forward to, or like they want for the community to have, the Hammock community to have? So they come in, they're like, they have no idea what they're going to expect, but they walk in and then they see all the things that they have. But what are some of the things that they tend to think about when moving into the community?
The interesting thing is, I have found that sometimes they don't think so much about healthcare, because if they're entering when they're well and active, they kind of love that fable that says, you're going to be well and active your whole life. You'll live to be 97, and while you're playing tennis, you'll, have a major heart attack or a stroke and just die, and that'll be that. But that isn't the way. Most of us are not fortunate enough for that situation. So I think what they look at are the activities. I know they want to know what kind of facilities there are, fitness facilities, and they really do care about their pets and what they care about the other people in the community. I know that part of what they do when someone new is entering Fleet Landing, and I expect OHOP does the same thing, is they have them meet some people who are already living there and have them understand, what the dining facility is like. And I know when we entered, we had a choice of some people to choose as another couple as kind of a sponsor or a mentoring couple. And I liked that a lot. And I'm guessing OHOP does the same thing. But I think people look at, who are the other people I'm going to be living with? What are they like? Where did they come from? And they look at how welcoming the community is, and what's it like when you're around those other people. They look at wellness and fitness activities. Obviously, the physical, layout of the place. Is it pretty? Is it kind of landscaping and home or apartment you'd be happy to live in? I think that's really important. it's a big transition for people usually to leave their home and come to a CCRC. And I found that some people just love it. I mean, they jump in with both feet and they've never been happier. And for other people, it's a real adjustment process to get used to just not having their own home, being someplace different, and how they become a part of that new community.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. What is some advice that you would give, let's say, to a community member, if you had to, somebody that wants to join in, what is the message that you would like them to know or hear about the community of Oak Hammock?
Oh, I would strongly encourage them to look at the list of all the activities that are going on and tell them that I'm sure that somewhere on that list is something that they either have done or want to learn how to do or have an interest in. And that's a good place to start, you know, whether it's painting or photography or pickleball or bridge or you name it. And I've also seen here that people come and they have an interest that nobody else has had. And so they simply, I don't know how wired in Oak Hammock is, and that would be good to find out, because at Fleet Landing, we have a website exclusively for things within the community. So you can find out about activities, you can find out about dining options, you can find out about what's new, you can, and more and more, we're going to have older people who are quite computer and technology savvy. It's a challenge for some of the older residents that are presently, let's say, in their 80s or 90s. But when you think people are moving in their late 60s or early 70s, those are people who have had a lot of experience and want to use technology. So if Oak Hammock offers that, it would be a good way for people to get integrated. Also, find out what's happening, and if they're particularly shy, they can ask their questions online.
That is correct. That is correct. How do you think the University of Florida could have a greater impact within the community? What can they do? How can they build relationships, long-term relationships? Obviously, they're there, but can we, on our end, can we do much more to help the community out?
Well, I don't know what's being done now, but I know things that people love was having students, all kinds of students in, you know, not just healthcare students, students in, you name it, everything. And students and faculty members coming to give presentations or lectures or orchestrate a particular activity that people could learn to do. I think that kind of exchange is really enriching in people's lives. And I don't know whether every department at UF has students or faculty members engaged at Oak Hammock, but I know that was the vision when we talked about it, that we couldn't think of any area of study at UF that wouldn't be of interest or couldn't contribute in some way to Oak Hammock. And I think that exchange would be mutually beneficial. So we came up with odd things like architecture. And I said, oh, really? I think it'd be great to have some architectural. You know, we had architectural students engaged early in the planning. But I said, as an ongoing process, to have people just come out and talk about what the existing architecture is like. Or if you're going to make changes in the dog park, you know, maybe the urban planning students would be the people to talk to about how you make that happen. But I know the vision that the initial board and the early board that worked on the Oak Hammock project had was it would be so rich because it would have so many ties with faculty members and students from UF. So I hope that's happening. And again, I think the challenge is if there's a department that doesn't have a tie, somebody ought to think about how they could create that.
Right, right. I mean, that's how we honestly, that's how we got involved. Like I know, like Dr. Tees, he's been giving lectures with the to the community very multiple times, and this time he's like, no, we need to start like collecting oral histories and get into this bag. Like there's so much knowledge from like from our end that we could be sharing and just building relationships. And it's like I think it helps the community out, and the same thing on our end. We get like we understand what the community is like, and just kind of like build those friendships, long-term relationships too when we're there. And I
Yes.
think right now we have a team that they actually just got back from over there from Hammock, and they're like, I'm like, how many interviews did you all do today? They're like, oh, we got like 4 or 5 interviews, and like the staff is really friendly, and I think they even like fed them over there. So it's like such an inviting community. So we're
Yes,
really happy and honored to be over there.
good. It's nice to know that. And I've been fascinated as I meet people in this community, the stories they have that I mean, they're fascinating stories of what happened to them in their lives. And, if you get to know them, many times people are very happy to talk
Yeah,
about their own experiences. And I think it could be exceedingly enriching to students. I think particularly like of history students, getting to talk to people and what they lived through at different times in their life. I mean, we still have some people who remember World War II. Certainly lots of people who remember the Vietnam era. What was it like then? People who remember segregation, and
yeah.
have their view of how it was taken for granted at a certain time in our history. So yeah, I find that's one of the most fascinating things to talk with people about what their lives have been like and what they remember.
That's exactly what we do. I think you just nailed all the points. I think we just did a couple of interviews. Gentleman from Vietnam too. That was part of that. Luckily, he ended up getting a Purple Heart as well, but he got shot. But luckily, he survived, and I mean now he works with the community in Gainesville, and so like all these prominent figures that are local that we don't even have an idea, and that's unfortunate at times because it's like these individuals are so empowering. They could empower our knowledge on how things used to be, even yeah, and how far we've come from those points, and just have a better understanding. But with that said, Dr. Long, it's already about to be the hour mark. I don't want to take much more of your time. I'm very grateful that you were able to make this happen today. We're right here virtually. Even virtually, it's fine. You don't have to be in person nowadays, but it's always nice to see the person either way in person. It's a different experience. But
Yes.
nonetheless, we are happy. I'm happy that you were able to make some time for us and share your story. To be honest, your story and all the incredible things that you've done for the OCAMA community and for UF. So we're very grateful to have you around, and we're still continuing to do work. I would suggest slow down a little bit, but at the same time, I get it. Once you're doing a lot of work, you're used to that beat, just going and going. So
Right. Well, it's been wonderful to meet you and talk to you, and I'm glad you're doing the project. I think it's a very interesting and worthwhile project. So I wish you the best. And if you can think of any other particular question or issue, feel free to send me an email or whatever. And
absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time,
Bye.
and have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too.